The first time Itachi and Deidara interacted was when the Akatsuki was trying to recruit Deidara, who at the time was just a guy that liked to blow stuff up with his art. He didn't really have a political interest in doing so. He helped terrible organizations before, but always because he wanted to express his art through his explosions, and the Akatsuki took note of that and thought Deidara was an interesting candidate for capturing tail beasts. Now, Deidara didn't really care about the Akatsuki either. He just wanted to blow stuff up, so he was reluctant into joining the Akatsuki, and that's when Itachi comes in. He is the guy who has to go and convince Deidara of joining the organization. Itachi tells Sasori and Kisame, who are with him present, trying to recruit Deidara, that he will be the one doing it, which is fighting Deidara, and then he tells Deidara, in a very Itachi fashion, "If I win, you'll join the organization." As though, like, there is no chance in hell Itachi is going to lose. He was absolutely certain he would win, and he was right, because even before the fight started, Itachi had already won. Itachi and Deidara did have that brief altercation where Deidara eventually wraps one of his large clay centipedes around Itachi's body and was about to explode Itachi and win the fight. But then Itachi just looks at Deidara and says, "You better take a look at yourself," and then that's when he sees it. Deidara was the one wrapped by the centipede instead because he was under a genjutsu. A genjutsu that, according to Kisame, was thrown at Deidara before the fight even started, ever since he looked at Itachi's eyes. Deidara was thoroughly humiliated in that fight, and to make things even worse, he stares up and sees Itachi in that exploded section of the wall, surrounded by two statues and the sun backlighting him from behind, a lens flare and everything. It was as though Itachi was a god for Deidara, someone with perfect art, absolutely beautiful jutsu, and someone that made Deidara extremely jealous, somebody that had better art than him. And this made Deidara absolutely mad. He couldn't accept Itachi being better at art than him, even though Itachi wasn't even trying to be an artist. So the actual reason why Deidara joins the Akatsuki is not to capture tail beasts, to go around and make the world a better place according to Pain's ideology. No, he wanted to be in the Akatsuki to eventually destroy Itachi and prove him that Deidara's art was superior. And obviously, to do that, Deidara did some stuff. He trained and developed new techniques. We heard about these things in the fight between Deidara and Sasuke. First, we learned that Deidara trained his left eye to resist ocular genjutsu, something very useful against Uchihas who are prominent ocular genjutsu users. And second, he developed his most powerful and scariest technique, which is the C4 Karura with those nano explosives. Now, some may say the C0 is his most powerful technique. I kind of disagree, because you don't have to die in order to use C4, and I would argue it's more difficult to avoid that jutsu than C0. And Deidara literally states that he developed C4 as a trump card to face Itachi eventually, but then he had to use it against Sasuke because Sasuke proved to be a very powerful threat. Unfortunately for Deidara, he never got his rematch because he died in the fight against Sasuke. But an interesting question would be, could Deidara have killed Itachi if they fought again after Deidara's preparations and new techniques? Now, this may seem like an insane question, because if Sasuke beat Deidara, surely Itachi could beat him as well, right? But it's not as simple as that, because Sasuke had something very special that Itachi doesn't have, which is the ability to use lightning style, the perfect counter for Deidara's jutsu. He can defuse the bombs just by using lightning style. That's how he survived C4. And Itachi wouldn't have that available to him. So let's analyze and see if Deidara had any chance of fulfilling his vengeance and proving his art was better than Itachi's. Now, a lot of people misunderstand how Deidara's trained eye worked against genjutsu, and it did work once in the fight against Sasuke. The first time Sasuke used genjutsu against Deidara, and that was when Deidara used C4 Karura for the first time, and we saw Sasuke being disintegrated and quote-unquote dying. That was the genjutsu. Deidara saw through that genjutsu. Because if you don't remember, Sasuke comes from behind after it's revealed he put Deidara under a genjutsu and shoves Araikiri into Deidara. However, that Deidara was a clay clone, and Deidara was actually hiding inside of his bird. He then uses C4 Karura again in a smaller clone this time and actually makes the jutsu work against Sasuke. Sasuke only survives because he Chidoris himself and diffuses all of the nano explosives that entered his bloodstream, and then he also uses genjutsu again against Deidara to make him believe that this time it worked, but it didn't. Sasuke comes from behind after Deidara realizes he was under a genjutsu and punches Deidara. So Deidara's eye was able to see through 1 out of 2 ocular genjutsus launched by Sasuke, which, to be fair, is far better than most people have done. Orochimaru, a guy that's probably much better at genjutsu itself than Deidara, was not able to do anything against Sasuke's paralysis genjutsu. And then when we compare Sasuke to Itachi's genjutsu, they were evenly matched in their hypothetical fight. Sasuke and Itachi, before they even traded blows, were exchanging genjutsu after genjutsu. It was that very cool scene where you thought, oh, Sasuke got Itachi, oh, Itachi got Sasuke, oh no, but it was all genjutsu, genjutsu again, and genjutsu, and Itachi's actually sitting on the throne behind Sasuke and all that kind of stuff. Zetsu, who was watching the fight, even remarks, oh, they've been just exchanging genjutsu and they haven't moved yet. That's pretty crazy. And then when Itachi put Sasuke under Tsukuyomi, Sasuke manages to break out of it. Now, some people argue that Itachi let him break out of it because Itachi's plan was to lose that fight on purpose, but the data book states that Sasuke broke that because of his abilities. But still, even if you say Itachi let him break out of Tsukuyomi, the thing is that they were relative in genjutsu to each other, so Deidara's trained eye would probably be effective against Itachi's genjutsu as well in some capacity. Obviously not 100%, but it would be better than nothing. Also, because Deidara now knows what a Sharingan is, he wouldn't look at Itachi's eyes, which certainly didn't help Deidara all that much in the fight against Sasuke, because Sasuke was still able to put Deidara under genjutsus there, but it would make it less easy than it was when Itachi put a genjutsu on Deidara in the first time they fought. Obviously, if Itachi uses Tsukuyomi and catches Deidara with it, there's nothing he can do. He dies. But we can probably assume that Itachi wouldn't be able to defeat Deidara with base genjutsu easily or fast like he did in the first encounter. Now, assuming that Deidara and Itachi would fight in an open field just like Deidara and Sasuke fought on, Deidara would probably begin the fight by using a bird to try and fly and stay away from Itachi, so that it would be difficult to catch him on a genjutsu and even to engage him in taijutsu. He could try and use C2 and even C3, but those explosions would probably be avoided by Itachi, either by just dodging them outright. Itachi was pretty damn fast, and Sasuke was able to avoid most of the C2 explosions, or by using his Susanoo with the Yara mirror, which is pretty damn powerful. But it's likely that if Deidara was fighting Itachi and he knew that was the moment for him to show how powerful his art was, he would probably just go for the C4 Karura immediately. After all, that's the jutsu he developed to face Itachi, so if he is facing Itachi, might as well not delay anything and use the jutsu when I have the most chakra. He only took a while to use C4 against Sasuke because he didn't think he would need that jutsu because he underestimated Sasuke, and when he started using C4 Karura, that was what he did the rest of the fight up until he used C0 as a last-ditch effort to kill Sasuke. Now, the C4 Karura does have a time for it to be formed. Deidara has to eat some of his clay and then puke that waterfall of clay until he forms the massive clone that will erupt into billions of nano explosives. The thing is that if Deidara is able to fly in his bird, which he probably would in the fight against Itachi, he would be far away from him, and Itachi wouldn't really have reach with a lot of things to hit Deidara with. I mean, he could maybe shoot a fireball, but I can see Deidara dodging that with no effort whatsoever. He was dodging the entire desert in the fight against Gaara without much difficulty. Itachi's Toadskull Blade would certainly not have the reach to get Deidara in the sky, and genjutsu, as we mentioned before, Deidara's probably gonna look at Itachi's eyes, and he has defenses against it. So Itachi's best choice would most likely be to use Amaterasu to get Deidara that way. And there's a good chance that if Itachi uses Amaterasu on Deidara, he just wins the fight. The thing is that Itachi doesn't really take Deidara very seriously. Even the first time they fought, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna win this and I know it. So maybe he would not try and use his Mangekyou Sharingan out of the gate because he can go blind by using that too much, and he doesn't like to spam that jutsu if he can help it. So if we assume Deidara is able to use C4 and create the massive clay clone, what would Itachi be able to do against it once Deidara uses the jutsu? Well, like Sasuke, Itachi would be able to see the nano explosives coming his way because he has the Sharingan and the Sharingan can see chakra. But once the nano explosives reach him, what would he do really? Because we don't get this information, but it's very likely that holding your breath is not enough to stop the nano explosives. It's not like a poisonous cloud of gas. They can probably enter through cracks in your skin, through your nostrils even though you're not breathing, through your eyes, maybe through your ears. Because if they only entered your body by you breathing them in, Sasuke wouldn't be able to see them in his hand when he was seeing what happened after Deidara used C4 against him for the second time. Now, Itachi could put up his Susanoo before the nano cloud gets to him, but would the Susanoo keep them away from him? Because maybe they're so small they can pass through the Susanoo like air itself can pass through the Susanoo, because after all, users of the Susanoo can breathe when they're using it, so there's air inside of it, and it's never really said that there's a danger of them running out of breath, so we can only assume that air comes in and out of the Susanoo normally. And because the nano explosives are so damn small, maybe the Susanoo wouldn't even compute that as a threat and just think it's something in the air. Does the Susanoo keep microbes away, for example? The nano explosives are about the size of microbes. Now, perhaps because the nano explosives have chakra imbued into them, they would not pass through the Susanoo barrier, but even still, it's a stretch. Itachi would certainly know that the cloud of nano explosives is dangerous. Maybe he wouldn't know exactly what they do, but there's a high possibility that Itachi is just going to deduce it before it gets to him. Now, he could try and outrun it, but if outrunning it was a possibility, then I don't think Deidara would have used it against Itachi. That's a jutsu that's supposed to be an insta-kill technique. The only real alternative I see Itachi doing here is to use the Susanoo, and if that doesn't work, what is Itachi going to do once the nano explosives are inside of his body? Now, maybe you could argue he could try and do something like Itachi and put Deidara under a genjutsu to think that he got Itachi, but instead he didn't. But as we mentioned before, this is not easy because Deidara literally countered the first genjutsu attempt Sasuke threw against him and managed to actually put nano explosives inside of Sasuke. And if Itachi got explosives in his body, he wouldn't have the ability to defuse them like Sasuke did, so he would be disintegrated. The only way for him to avoid that would be to kill Deidara before he can ignite the explosives, which, to be fair, can happen if he uses Amaterasu, for example. But even if he hits Deidara with an Amaterasu, Deidara wouldn't die instantaneously. He would burn and agonize, but I'm pretty sure he would most definitely ignite the explosives even though he was burning to death, and die laughing maniacally while the dark flames of Amaterasu burn him and say, "I won! My art is better than yours!" Now, if that doesn't work, and if Deidara survives this exchange with Itachi after he uses C4, he would still have C0. There's also the problem of Itachi not letting him activate C0. After all, he has to undo those stitches on his chest and eat some clay with his chest mouth to do the C0, and it does take a while for the explosion to erupt out of him, so perhaps Itachi would be able to hit him with a Totsuka blade and seal him before he can explode, or maybe even Amaterasu him away before he can explode, but Amaterasu just takes a little longer to do things than instantaneously, and the C0 explosion is not that slow. But assuming Deidara manages to make the explosion go off, could Itachi counter it somehow, dodge it, block it? The answer is no. Now, a lot of people are going to bring up the Yara mirror, which is supposedly a mirror that can block any possible attack, and even if that may be a disputed claim, I don't know if truth-seeking orbs wouldn't break through the thing, the explosion is too big, and the shield can only block from a single direction. Like, the C0 explosion is about the size of a Bijudama blast from the Ten Tails, so it would engulf Itachi Susanoo completely, and even even if you say that the Yaramir would have tanked the explosion, the rest of the Susanoo would be obliterated by it, and Itachi would die with it. But do I think that either the C4 or the C0 would work against Itachi in this hypothetical revenge fight? I'd say it's pretty unlikely, because as I said before, those jutsus take a while to charge. Not a long time, but enough time for Itachi to think about a counter. Itachi also has great genjutsu, as I mentioned before, and even though Deidara is trained to counter it, Tsukiyomi is going to destroy Deidara. If Deidara looks at Itachi's eye for an instant, he's done. And even though Itachi was very cocky the first time he fought against Deidara and said, oh yeah, I'm gonna win this thing, he acted like that because he knew he had already won. He put Deidara under a genjutsu before he even fought against him, and he knew Deidara wouldn't be able to do anything against the genjutsu because he didn't know he was under a genjutsu, he didn't know how the Sharingan works, so he knew the fight was already won. If in the second fight he started to fight against Deidara and he noticed that Deidara was countering his genjutsu better, that he had strategies to employ against Itachi, he would take the fight more seriously. After all, Itachi knows Deidara is powerful. He is an Akatsuki member, a very dangerous shinobi, and would probably activate his Mangekyo Sharingan pretty early on. Because that's the thing, we only saw Itachi fighting seriously for about 30 seconds in the entire series. He didn't fight seriously against Sasuke because he obviously didn't want to kill Sasuke. He wanted to die in the fight and take Orochimaru with him. So the only time in that fight that Itachi fought seriously was when Orochimaru came out, and he was like, yeah, I'm just going to use the Susanoo to steal Orochimaru real quick because that's what I have to do here. And when he did that, he killed Orochimaru in 30 seconds. When Itachi invaded the Leaf Village in part 1, he wasn't fight seriously against Kakashi, Asuma, Guy, and Jiraiya because he didn't want to kill those guys. He actually wanted to give them information and leave the village before doing any damage. And in the work, he was nerfed as an Edo Tensei when he was being controlled by Kabuto because the Edo Tensei don't fight at 100%. They're just programmed to counter and attack in specific ways. The only time he fights seriously in that first fight against Naruto and B is after he gets released from Edo Tensei, when he gets the Koromatsu Kami that was programmed and the crow that was inside of Naruto, and then he saves Naruto and B from Nagato. I mean, Nagato completely controlled by Kabuto was a menace. He was about to kill Naruto and B in 30 seconds or so, and Itachi saves them and then defeats Nagato in about 30 seconds or so, fighting seriously. And then when Itachi fights against Kabuto, he's fighting seriously, but he is nerfed because he cannot kill Kabuto, so the fight's not really that fair. He's not going all out. But the thing is, when Itachi fights seriously, he fought against two extremely powerful opponents, Orochimaru and Nagato, and he defeated them in less than a minute. So if he realized Deidara was trying to kill him, he would fight seriously against Deidara, and therefore he would probably win. But if Deidara gets the C4 or the C0 to explode on Itachi, then he loses. But this is much more unlikely to happen than Itachi winning the fight. Also, if Deidara's in character as well, he'll probably not take any help from anybody because he wants to prove his own art is superior to Itachi's art, so like having people interfering with the fight would be an affront to his own art and prowess, and therefore he would probably lose the fight. But still, there's a chance Deidara wins. There's also the narrative argument that Deidara's art is always going to lose to the art of the Sharingan, and this is a theme of the story. Even after Deidara's masterpiece, the C0, Sasuke was able to counter it with his own Sharingan, the superior form of art. So if Deidara was to fight against Itachi, who also has a Sharingan, and the original guy Deidara thought was superior to him in art, he would also lose because that's what he's destined to do. He is blinded by his philosophy that art is an ephemeral explosion and not recognize that there are other forms of art that may be superior than his, and that's his character flaw that he never overcome. But still, if we take the narrative arguments out of the equation, I would say Itachi takes this fight 8 to 9 out of 10 times. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and also like the video if you enjoyed it. It helps me with the algorithm. Watch this other cool video right here for more Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching.